So picture this, 1 year into a new presidency. On the one hand, you've got the global stage at Davos, where the view is of a world teetering on the edge of chaos. But on the other hand, from inside the White House, it's a completely different story. Today, we're going to dig into those two incredibly different realities and see how they stack up side by side. Okay, so our story kicks off in Davos, Switzerland. You know, that big annual meeting of world leaders. But this time was different. The source material we're looking at describes it as an emergency summit. The mood was apparently frantic, urgent, a reaction to what they saw as the world just rapidly spinning out of control.
And that urgency, well, it boiled over into some, let's just say, unusually blunt language. This quote, which reportedly came from one world leader, really captures a huge shift. All that careful, diplomatic language they usually use, yeah, that was thrown right out the window. This was raw, unfiltered frustration.
I mean, this language, it really paints a picture of the atmosphere over there in Davos, doesn't it? It suggests that after years of trying all these different strategies, trying to flatter, to manage, to kind of coddle the US president, they were done. They had completely abandoned that approach. Now it seems they felt like they were dealing with a direct and totally unpredictable threat. And what's really staggering here is who this was all coming from. We're not talking about adversaries. These were traditional US allies, their partners. They were describing the United States as a superpower run by a would-be tyrant, calling the president a monster, and basically saying they needed to form a united front against what they saw as bullying. One ally really summed it all up when they said, look, if you want us to treat you like an ally, you have to act like one. And this feeling, it wasn't just stuck inside the conference halls. High up in the mountains, overlooking Davos, this incredibly powerful visual protest was happening. People literally hiked up there with hundreds of torches to spell out a two-word message for everyone to see: no kings. It was just this clear, blazing rejection of what they saw as autocratic behavior, shining right down on all the world leaders below. Okay, so what exactly caused all this? What specific actions happened in the president's first year that provoked such a strong and really public reaction? Let's dive into that. Well, it was this rapid-fire series of moves that had the international community completely rattled. You had unilateral tariffs that affected hundreds of billions in global trade, the truly extraordinary act of capturing a foreign head of state, open threats of military action against Iran, a day-one pardon for all the January 6th insurrectionists, and on top of all that, the creation of a new Board of Peace, which many saw as a direct challenge to the United Nations itself. And the fallout here wasn't just diplomatic. You could see it, clear as day, in the economy. On the very same day as the summit, the Dow Jones Industrial Average plummeted almost 900 points. It was like this giant flashing red light, signaling that all this geopolitical instability and the trade disruptions were seriously spooking global markets. And this quote, wow, this reportedly comes from a text message sent by President Trump to the Prime Minister of Norway, and it gives us a real glimpse into the mindset that had other leaders so worried. The president seems to be explicitly linking his commitment to global peace to whether or not he got a personal award, the Nobel Peace Prize. For his allies, that was a deeply, deeply troubling connection to make. So all of this sets up this fascinating split-screen moment. Because while the world's leaders are basically in full-blown crisis mode over in Davos, President Trump was back home holding a rally and painting a completely different picture of his first year in office. And this just illustrates that disconnect perfectly. On one side, you've got the world's view the U.S. is a rogue state, and the president is the biggest threat to peace. Then, on the other side, you have the president's own words, we've never been stronger, I saved millions, and even, I think God is very proud of the job I've done. I mean, these are two realities that just cannot exist in the same universe. Back at his speech, the president actually read from this long, printed-out list of his accomplishments. It included things like stripping Hunter Biden of his security detail, signing an executive order to get rid of paper straws, and bringing back Columbus Day. When you put that list up against the global anxieties about war and economic collapse, it's presented as evidence of a president whose focus was on a very, very different set of priorities. So what were the real stakes here? This wasn't just about one leader or one country's reputation. According to the source, this was about the potential collapse of the entire global system that's been holding things together for almost 80 years. The international system built after World War II is described with this really powerful phrase, a World War avoidance machine. The basic idea was that the US, as a victor of the war, would sit at the center of this whole web of institutions, the UN, NATO, all designed with one main goal, to make sure another world war never, ever happened.
And right there, That is the central paradox of this whole situation. The very nation that designed and anchored this World War avoidance machine was now being seen as the biggest force trying to break it. The country that was supposed to be the source of order was now seen as the primary source of disorder. Now, the analysis here is pretty nuanced. It's not some nostalgic look back at a perfect, rosy past. It's very clear that U.S. power has been abused, and it points to conflicts from Vietnam to Iraq as proof. But the argument is that despite all of its massive flaws, that system still provided the basic structure, the ordering principle that has, for all its faults, managed to prevent a direct war between the great powers for decades.
And that is the huge, provocative question we're left with. It's the question that was hanging over everyone at Davos, and honestly, it's still echoing today. What happens to the World War avoidance machine when the country, at its very core, starts acting, at least in the eyes of its allies, like the very thing it was designed to contain? What comes next?